everywhere appeared the voluptuous taste of the daughter of Martinique and of Paris, whose dreams were of the gorgeous nature in which her cradle had been rocked, and who loved her flowers better than her jewels. Within the chateau, the same glowing spirit reigned. It was approached under a tented portal. Two obelisks in red marble, covered with hieroglyphs from Richelieu's chateau in Poitou, had welcomed the conqueror from Egypt. Napoleon's working room was tented as the chambers of unhappy Hortense were at Orenenburg many years afterwards. The dining, drawing, and billiard rooms were all en suite, but the private home of Napoleon and Josephine and their children was apart, shut off, and lying away from the gay company of the chateau. This was the home within home. The galleries were furnished with marbles from the antique, bought out of the ruins of Marly, and with busts that were brought with the obelisks at the entrance. By degrees, a fair collection of pictures filled the rooms. Paul Potter, Teniers, Bergam, Claude Lorraine, Van Loo, Bergeret, Garnier, Bonton, and of course Girard and Girodet. The spoils of war were mingled with the arts of peace along the broad galleries, and between them Hortense and her schoolfellows talked or flirted with the great captains, savants, and artists of the consulate. Had Hortense been free to choose in those giddy and happy days of girlhood, her hand would have fallen into that of Duroc. In 1801, Malmaison was full of merry people. St. Cloud and Fontainebleau had not overshadowed the little property which Napoleon in simpler days had calculated might be made to yield 8,000 francs a year, including the sale of the vegetables. It was the home of a happy family, blessed with hosts of friends, and giving welcome to the best company left in France in the holiday hours at the end of each week. Then in the grounds, the week's state work done, Napoleon and Hortense would lead off the game of prisoner's base. With renowned generals and captains in their wake, the graver persons would sit round with Josephine and give judgment on the fray. An eyewitness of the Sans-Souci romps has described Napoleon throwing himself heart and soul into the fun and rolling upon the ground in a fit of laughter before giving himself up to the enemy, while Hortense, full of audacity and cunning, in feints continued to baffle her pursuers. In the exchange of prisoners, 2 enemies were insisted upon for the conqueror of Marengo, but 3 for Mademoiselle de Beauharnais. But there were shadows behind this bright picture. There were heartburns and plots among the company. The quiet, reserved, austere young soldier, who could rarely be persuaded to help in Hortense's theatricals, much less to romp in the park, was chosen by Josephine to be the husband of her light-hearted and brilliant daughter. Napoleon was childless. Would he look satisfied upon the offering of his brother Louis and his stepdaughter Hortense as his successors? It appears pretty certain that this speculation dwelt for a time in Josephine's brain, and that it was the reason why in those Malmaison days she strove to draw the silent and grave Louis towards her daughter. Napoleon approved the project, but Josephine was the soul of it, and it speaks well for the heart of Hortense that she never in afterlife uttered a reproach against the authors of her unhappy marriage. We may linger over the few happy years of girlhood which Hortense de Beauharnais spent at Malmaison, because they are the only thoroughly bright passages in her life. We see her here amid her stepfather's dazzling company at her best, a simple, bright-witted, accomplished girl, just tinged with the tender melancholy cast over her by the misfortunes of her childhood, but full of enthusiasm and delighted to escape from the monotonous simplicities of Madame Capin's seminary. At Saint-Germain, she bewitched many of the soldiers whose eyes fell upon her in her plain white frock, as she sat by the side of the stately and gracious Josephine. The loving element in Hortense's nature disarmed every censor who had once passed within its influence. By this element she held sway and mastery over Napoleon, at times even when full of mortification and suspicion. On his return from Egypt, he would not approach Josephine. She was the good angel in the Malmaison house, and when it was broken up, it was to her that the scattered members returned again and again in their troubles. Chapter 2, Louis Bonaparte. In 1796, citizen Jacques-Henri Bernadette de Saint-Pierre in Paris received the following letter dated de la Valette, June 22nd. Citizen, forgive an excited youth the liberty he has dared to take, moved by a natural simplicity which lies at his heart and which appears to be your only guide. I have lately established myself at Toulon. I left my country to escape the bitter persecutions of a tyrant exercised over a family, the individual members of which desired to be independent, and whose influence might have been hurtful to the pernicious designs of this unjust man. But I say no more of this, which is only too sad in itself, but it is unfelt by the just and free man, or to use your expression, by l'homme pariah. This work, Harmonie de la Nature, deeply affected me, but Paul and Virginia, it cost me many tears. And I have no doubt Paul didn't shed more when he was separated from his sister. If, citizen, I've dared to write to you, it is only to ask you the facts of this work, which has not been the fruit of your imagination. You say there is some truth in it. What is true? What is false? This is my object. This is what I've wished to learn, in order that in another time, when rereading it, I may be able to say myself, to soothe my distressed sensibility, this is true, this is false. O wise and happy man, O man of nature, forgive the liberty I take, but respect my motives. If you ever should have any feeling towards me, remember that I begged your friendship, not for today, when I'm young and learning as well as age, and am consequently unworthy to converse with you, but for the future, because then, having acquired a little more experience, I shall have the right to pray again for your friendship, or, if I should feel myself unworthy of it, to beg your pardon. For the present, I have the honor to be, citizen, with the profoundest esteem for the man and the author, your very humble and very obedient servant friend, Louis Bonaparte, age 18 years, of Ajaccio in Corsica.